I recently put out a tweet, or is it a post now? I can't remember, on X, formerly Twitter, and it said, I love FreeBSD. It's a great OS. I use it as my only daily driver for 100% of everything I do. But what do you think would make FreeBSD better? Technical and non-technical suggestions welcome. I'll collect the answers and put them in a video, with credit of course, which you are now watching. But it was an interesting question that actually brought up quite a few answers. So I've put many of them up here. Some of them I haven't because they might be repetition or maybe they're non-related. But I'll put the ones up. I'll leave the people who put them up credited, as I said. And I'll give some answers as to possibly why there isn't any support and what we could do about it. These are only suggestions, of course, and the powers that be may not, probably won't take any notice, but you never know. By far, the biggest topic was about Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi is it's a touchy subject with FreeBSD. A lot of the old standards are supported. That's fine. There's a lot of old equipment out there, but for the newer standards, the faster ones like I don't know, is it AX now? I can't remember, AC or AX. FreeBSD really can't, and so that automatically precludes a lot of laptops that FreeBSD won't work with. I mean, you could of course plug in an Ethernet cable or put in an older USB dongle there, but that kind of like negates the purpose of modern hardware. So what can we do about that? Well, a lot of the comments saying I'm having to either switch to OpenBSD or Gen 2 for my laptop because I'm constantly fighting with Wi-Fi. Curious Pilot says MPLS kernel support, better Wi-Fi drivers, compatibility, more important than aggressive marketing campaign, which we'll get to later. Another one says Wi-Fi drivers, 802.11ac. Wi-Fi support is the only reason I've not switched to FreeBSD on my laptop. And better commercial support, Wi-Fi drivers, and better Wi-Fi driver support at the end. And a lot of comments suggest that they would switch to FreeBSD if it had better driver support, Wi-Fi driver support. Now that is huge. This is only a very small sample, and as such, you probably could dismiss it and say, oh well, it's just the usual lot on Twitter or X. From the small sample that I've done, it would suggest that, and over the time that I've had comments on my channel, it would suggest that Wi-Fi is perhaps the number one issue with FreeBSD. Now, things have moved on, because I remember a few years back it used to be something like NVIDIA drivers, or it used to be other stuff. But now it's Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi is particularly important. Because whereas, say, for instance, in a server, it's going to be Ethernet connection, it's going to be, cabled connection, which is not a problem. If you want FreeBSD to perhaps go on to desktops or laptops, in particular laptops, and then maybe even, it would be nice like mobile devices, you're going to have to get Wi-Fi done. So we're going to have to tackle that. We're going to have to grab that nettle. And it's not just on, PCs and desktops and laptops where Wi-Fi perhaps is not ready yet. It's also not ready on the Raspberry Pi, which is a strange one, because the Raspberry Pi, a lot of people would use a Raspberry Pi as a Wi-Fi connected device. Maybe it's doing something far away, or maybe it's, I've seen people use Raspberry Pis being used as bird box watches, which is fantastic, or a weather station, so you really can't have a cable coming in. There's something like that, it's not going to work on FreeBSD because the Wi-Fi driver's not there. Again, you could plug in an older dongle, which then really, you're taking up a precious USB slot really in the Raspberry Pi, because it's got about 4, I think. And now that support for FreeBSD on the Raspberry Pi is at tier 1, it's become an issue. And if you can see at the bottom of the graphic there, it says unsupported BCM 43438 driver. So really, it's not just on what you call traditional laptops and desktops, it's also on the Raspberry Pi and other SBCs, which can be an issue. Now, what the most frustrating thing is, and it can be for users, and it is for me to a certain extent, is that other operating systems like OpenBSD, OpenBSD 7.5, they're tackling the issue. I mean, it says OpenBSD 7.5 introduces several new drivers and support for additional hardware, ensuring broader compatibility and seamless integration with a diverse range of devices, from display controllers used in Apple devices to Qualcomm 802.11ax wireless chips. They're supporting it. Why can't FreeBSD work with these? Work together? Is it pride or is it stubbornness? I don't know what it is. But whatever it is, we are falling behind. And OpenBSD has a good reputation. So, the danger is we could be leapfrogged by them. And it's not just perhaps well-funded at OS. I mean, I know that OpenBSD is relatively well-funded. I don't know if it's as big as FreeBSD, but it's certainly well-funded. It is smaller OSs like RISC-OS or RISC-OS, which was the original ARM operating system back in the 80s when Acorn developed ARM. It developed R4OS, which then became RISC-OS. And even now, RISC-OS is still going on the Raspberry Pi. It's a fantastic operating system. It's really quick. It is so quick. You have to wonder how they do it. It runs really fast off a SD card. And it's wonderful. Almost instantaneous startup and shutdown. Really good. But even they are sorting out the Wi-Fi solution on the Raspberry Pi. And it will be the Raspberry Pi for them, not so much PC hardware. And they've got two solutions, I think, which it blows your mind when you think about it, because they've even got less funding than OpenBSD and definitely less than FreeBSD. So I don't know what's going on. It says it should be noted that the software currently only covers platforms that use Broadcom chips to provide Wi-Fi, which includes a Raspberry Pi, since its third main so it's obviously on Raspberry Pi 3 onwards. So it's Broadcom chips. They're doing it. They're getting on with it. Very frustrating. But it doesn't mean that progress isn't being made in FreeBSD. It's just it can be difficult to try and find out what the progress is. I know that FreeBSD is funding Bjorn Zeeb, I hope I pronounced your name right, mate, to integrate support for current generation Intel Wi-Fi devices by migrating to the dual license upstream driver of the Linux kernel. Sounds great, but it's been going on, I think, since 2021. It says we also collaborate with the FreeBSD Wi-Fi development community in integrating 802.11ac infrastructure. Yes, well, you might, but there's nothing really to show for it yet. And I know these things are not easy. I don't even pretend to understand how to code, but you can understand people's frustration after nearly 3 years. And there's nothing tangible to show. I could be wrong on that. If I am, please leave your comment in down below and, educate me. I'll be fantastic if you could. But there doesn't seem to be much to show for it, and it's that lack of showing which is frustrating people, and they're moving on to alternatives. Looking on beyond FreeBSD wiki page, there's a little brief details about him. I mean, he is a very talented and capable developer, and that is under no doubt. And the job that he has to do with this is undoubtedly hard. I mean, my hat goes off to him, but it is frustrating because there doesn't seem to be much news about his progress. Now, I don't know whether he's finding it difficult. He's finding it a lot harder, just one single person doing it. I don't know. I think an official update or regular updates from FreeBSD Foundation may be in order, just to let people know. So then those in the community who try to, sell FreeBSD, as it were, can give updates. So when someone asks, saying, what about Wi-Fi, and we could relay it on to them or point them to the webpage. But there doesn't seem to be much information at the moment, which is a frustrating thing. Another page of his, this one gives the latest news, and it really only covers up to 2021, where it says wireless standards and driver update for FreeBSD, work in progress, status report, not published yet. So that was the 30th of September 2021. So that's more or less, I should imagine, when it started. And another one from message board. And this is dated 4th September 2023. It says, hi, here's a quick update on what should happen in the next 6 weeks or so. I don't think it has. Number one, that's likely most of me with the help of you, wherever possible. So he's getting help from the community. Need to get the stability issues resolved. So for 14.0. Yeah, I don't think it made it into that. And number two, for I'll disconnect. Yeah, I mean, so the main reason behind it is that Linux KPI-based drivers will need updates to all testing. So, and I'll try and keep my best to keep all the other drivers kind of. Yeah, I think maybe is perhaps having is a bit harder work than he envisaged, which, you know, I'm not surprised it is really. There is another page we can look at. There's no date on this, but it's wireless update on the FreeBSD project page. It says, during the quarter, not much work was publicly visible and admittedly slightly slow. Behind the scenes, wireless work is happening on two fronts. The 11N. 11N really, it's not, I've been lucky that way. I mean, there are one or two chipsets which don't work, but mostly 11N, it worked anyway. 11N is what I use. A little dongle that plugs in. I buy that from Amazon. It was about £5, not expensive. 11AC and WPA. So I didn't know that was an issue, but 11AC definitely is not working. 11AX, I don't know whereabouts that would be. So the longer that this thing takes, you're going to get new standards coming up. So you're forever chasing that. You know, if you're a little dog, you're forever chasing that car that's just going too fast. You're never going to catch up. And another page we can have a look at, wireless work in progress. And it is 2023 ATH Athoros, I think it is in the main, currently disconnected from the build. So there's quite a lot disconnected from the build. I don't know what all this is. I don't know if it's good or bad. But I do know that nothing is ready yet. And that was the 23rd of April. So yes, it is a slightly disheartening and confusing issue. I don't know what to say about that really. And it's not just FreeBSD. There are Linux is better compatibility with Linux because they work more with the manufacturers, but it is not all sunshine and rainbows. It is kind of similar to a certain extent. This is a USB Wi-Fi chipset for Linux. This document is a summary that includes information about many modern USB Wi-Fi. So I don't know about integrated ones, but this is the Wi-Fi, the USB ones. And as you can see, I mean, it goes up to Wi-Fi 7, and there's Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 5, and it shows you whether it's compatible, you got monitor mode, AP mode, and all that kind of thing, and whether it's recommended for Linux. And there's quite a few no's there, the MediaTek ones, some Realtek ones as well. So, and some of the older ones, it says yes, and ticks and compatibility, and that's pretty much, to a certain extent, FreeBSD's position as well. So it's not all fantastic for Linux. The situation is slightly better, but not perfect for them either. That doesn't mean that we can't make the best of the things that we can use. And one site I would recommend is Vermaiden, who has a fantastic networking and Wi-Fi page, and little dongles you can use and different wireless adapters. And he will give you most of his knowledge, and it's pretty extensive. How to connect things to your laptop, Wi-Fi, you name it, and it's there. Give it a check out, give it a look, and you might find some, admittedly, it's going to be some slightly unorthodox methods and slightly older equipment, but for FreeBSD, you know, this is what we have to do. Hopefully there's something there that can solve your problem. Another point that was brought up was better hardware support. Now, this is a difficult one, of course. I mean, you can't make manufacturers, you can't say, oi, support our operating system. They'll support your operating system if they think or if they know there's a larger growing or large existing user base. There's going to be money to be made. If you're going to get a large user base that's growing, they're going to buy your equipment. You get in there and you supply it. Again, like you're looking at the Vermaiden page for Wi-Fi solutions, the FreeBSD project has a section with every release. This is looking at FreeBSD 14.0, and it's hardware notes. So it's all the supported hardware, chipsets, various standards that are supported in the latest release. It's worth checking this out, having a look. I mean, almost everything you can imagine is listed. I've seen some Allwinner chipsets up there. There's some controllers. So a lot of it will not be new. Some of it will be old or well used. I mean, that's the route I always go down. So I buy secondhand on eBay. But at least I know that everything will work. And this one will give you an entire list. So before you make any decisions, check it out. Do your homework. You shouldn't have to. I mean, wouldn't it be great just to go down and buy off the shelf stuff for it to work? That would be good, but that's not going to happen. So if you give this a look, check your stuff out before you buy it, and you'll have more success than just blindly buying off the shelf stuff. And speaking of which, if you want to have a look at what other people are using, this hardware info, I'll give you the address in the description box down below, but it will let you have a look at what you're running, and you can even upload the details you want. Privacy concerns are all right. It's not going to give personal details, and so other people can check what you're using with FreeBSD or any of the BSDs, and you can all cooperate. That's like, for instance, this is Hardware Probe. If you install it, it will take down details, upload them, and you can compare them. It's run by volunteers in the community. And I don't think there is any sort of issues there with privacy. You don't have to use it, of course, but it's useful. And here's what previous probes have shown, going up to February. And there's some Dells, and it might give you an idea, and here's more probing details, but it might give you more idea about what's compatible. And even types of computers use that. Useful things. And if you want specific parts, then you can search in here and it will see if it can find it for you. It's an interesting site, and like I say, I'll leave a link in the description box down below. And some of the comments that don't fit into a category, so I'll put them in the miscellaneous, is like better support for Wayland. Just a simple walkthrough. Well, I might do a video on that. It's not something that I'm looking into. But Wayland is supported on FreeBSD, and even the FreeBSD handbook has a chapter on Wayland. I'm not currently using it. I don't really envisage that I will, and I can't see a use for it, but a lot of people are starting to ask for it, so maybe I will. And it's kind of extensive. I can't vouch for the veracity of this, but considering it's on the it's in the handbook, I would imagine it's pretty good. So check that out, have a look, and see if that helps you. Another question or another suggestion for what FreeBSD is missing is a working Minecraft client. Well, yeah, I mean, you could play Minetest. Minetest is this, but yes, there used to be for FreeBSD. Just having a quick look, and there's a Minecraft client 1.7.9. I don't think it works anymore. You've got a Minecraft server, of course, a multi-MC, which is a Minecraft launcher with the ability to manage multiple instances. I don't know if that works. You could check it out and let me know. And next, we've got a whole bunch of suggestions from BSD Jedi. A short list, he says. I'd like to see a long list. Virtual drivers to get FreeBSD run much easier, smoother. That's what he would like. More secure defaults. Okay. They should be at least there in the installer. Although there are some security lockdown things in the installer, which is added a few releases back. So that's something. And many of the things that maybe you can do after install, post-install. Jails is awesome, but it would be great to have a layered file system to better implement more Docker Podman-like container system. Beyond my pay grade, that. More literature, and I don't mean tutorials or videos. Well, isn't that nice? It says, I mean books I can buy and read about FreeBSD following the great work from Michael Lucas. Yes, I know what you mean. There's nothing beats having more official manuals. Or even an on-the-shelf magazine. That would be something. I mean, there's Linux format, and you got a few other Linux ones which kind of like fit the gap between official documentation and unofficial community stuff. Like, it sits on the shelf and you can pick it up and buy it, and it will help you with things. But there's nothing for FreeBSD. That is kind of discerned. There's even, I mean, going back to RISC OS, the smaller British OS for ARM, there is a printable magazine there is a printed magazine which is available. I think it's mail order. You're not going to buy it in a shop, but it's still there. And it's a printed magazine called Archive, I think. So even they got them, and there's no the FreeBSD Foundation, and they produce they help produce a wonderful FreeBSD magazine. But it's in PDF. Nothing beats the physical, tactile feel of a magazine in your hand, I think. To put it on the table. But, you know. Number 5, more awareness campaigns and evangelists. Well, that's what we are trying as best. And 6, might sound a bit old, but I personally miss the full install set that I am able to use without internet connection. Well, you can do that with FreeBSD. I did a video a good few years back now on that. You can install from DVD. A few DVDs involved. And you don't need the internet. Although it's far from ideal, but you still can do that. We have another one whose Mike says, you need commercial support. That would be nice. Loquacious. My goodness me. If more people had heard of it, more people would use it. I think it needs a publicity campaign. A company equivalent to Red Hat. Yeah. FreeBSD is infinitely nicer to use Ubuntu than Ubuntu, but somehow Ubuntu has risen in the floss ranks. This screams my corn. I've never heard that one before. ext4 is beans compared to ZFS. Well, and there's lots of reasons. You know, as you probably know, why FreeBSD isn't up there with Linux at the moment. Mainly historical, of course, and you know, it's once everyone else is set off racing around the track and you set off last, it can be difficult to catch up. Lots of reasons why. And Ubuntu, it came at a time when the average distro perhaps was a little bit harder to install than it is now, and they came along and did it automatically, which gave them a leg up. And they have lost some of the luster recently, of course. Things like Linux Mint has taken all that kind of thing, but that's why. And I think that's something that perhaps FreeBSD can learn, an easy install or an easier install, along the lines of something GhostBSD does. But we'll see. Dave Cameron? Not the David Cameron, surely not. If FreeBSD update wasn't a total turd, print every config file, make me manually edit diffs in the unintelligible pre-U format, spits out file with unreserved diff, does the... Yeah, I think he doesn't like the... when you upgrade and it says you want to keep your configuration files. I've not had an issue with that personally, but I can understand it if you want to make changes or whatever. It possibly can be frustrating. Perhaps in a more user-friendly format. I don't know. Avion Tech Security says, my entire security AI runs on FreeBSD. Well, that's great. Self-learning AI, self-expanding AI, self-evolving AI. It sounds worrying. Detect malicious online threats before they are registered. Number 1, modding, changing the kernel should become easier. And 2, different standard kernels. Maybe, possibly, might be a good idea. Lars Tunkran says, active cooperation with laptop manufacturers is required to support hardware in laptops which can't be tailored to what works in FreeBSD in the same way it's possible with desktop side PC. Again, yes, we need to contact those manufacturers and perhaps partner with them, work with them, get things done. Cadio. Do you know, my pronunciation is not good at the best of times, But he suggests, number one, a GUI for Gpart, like Gparted. Now, that is something I was going to bring up, and that's an excellent suggestion. So if you want to perhaps get a hard drive prepped, a more user-friendly way of doing it, that wouldn't be again, I don't know whether it's easy or hard to implement something like that. That might be an interesting project for someone. Number two, some basic how-tos. I'm struggling to clone a ZFS system volume for a newer NVMe SSD, and I couldn't find a basic how-to. Yep, that's not something I can do easily. But yeah, some official how-tos might be nice on that, if the FreeBSD Foundation is watching. From Rishure Bagan. Better commercial support, Wi-Fi drivers at native Docker and K8s. Docker is something I've heard quite a few people mention. Although Jails is great and all that kind of thing, that Docker is I wouldn't say industry standard, but it's something that maybe could be brought to FreeBSD. And better commercial support, yes. Vic says packages with flavors like postfix MySQL and postfix LDAP. Yep, possibly. RDX says, is there a possibility that FreeBSD is missing Prospective? That's interesting. There is intersection between developer, administrator, and user. Can any one of them tell seriously that easy when using FreeBSD? I think that's what's missing. So something which FreeBSD should perhaps be adaptive to users, user needs, which then can scale up to administrators and developers without being perhaps difficult for one or difficult for the other, but only easy for one or the other, if that makes sense. So all three of them type of users could sit down and get on with it because it's easy for them and not hard for the others, or something like that. I don't know. That's a difficult one. It's an interesting question. It depends on the install. So perhaps an adaptive installer. Might be an interesting idea. That. Daniel Ditlaff says 0. The kernel and the base system are one thing. Ooh, I don't know about that. That's what happens in the Linux world. I'm not sure about. I like the way that it's two separate at the moment. So if one screws up, it doesn't affect the other. One designed, engineered, and planned development. ZFS, KQ, and Procstat. I don't know about that. Simplicity and one way of screwing the light bulb. Syscontrol, okay. Existence of documentation and handbooks. No revolutions between releases. And stable ABI. These aren't really what's missing. This is what's available, I think, with FreeBSD. And this is one of the features that people like. I might be reading that wrong. I probably am. But thank you, Daniel. Times 5K sub 30. What I'm currently doing, I think, would make it more marketable and appealing. Make it an operating system game developers would want to develop for. That's something I've suggested before. I'm not much of a gamer anymore, and recently had a hardware failure on my main PC. Virtual networks run well on all backup power. Yeah, I think if you one way to sort of like perhaps get games for FreeBSD, because games bring in users. If you got a reputation for your system to be great for gamers, say for instance like the Amiga did. The Amiga was a great computer. I think it was used more in Europe than it was in the US, which is, and it became obviously a gamer system. Although that was a shame because it had some great multimedia and had quite a few business applications. But it was the games that brought in the users, and a lot of other systems at that time were similar. And even now people use Windows because of the games. They might not like particularly using Windows. But if Windows has got the game support, it can bring in users. And the same thing with Steam on Linux. More and more people are using that because you can avoid using Windows and you play games. So if FreeBSD kind of like attracted the game developers, you then maybe would get, not necessarily the case of course, but you might get more games made on FreeBSD and played on FreeBSD. It's an interesting idea, wouldn't hurt. Makis Pyloris says, it needs software. They lack some important ones, i.e. Notepad QQ or ZZZFM. I don't know what ZZZFM is, but yeah, there are some missing software packages. Big commercial ones. Free ones from the commercial company would be nice. Of course, Adobe, I mean, they don't really support Linux, so it's not going to come to FreeBSD. But, some large packages might be in order, like the video editor Lightworks would be nice, and DaVinci Resolve, stuff like that, So yeah, there's one or two things missing that will be nice. CUDA support would be nice as well. Guides, it's not got a good wiki like Linux does, and it's a shame to search for things in wikis from other software guides. I do things like create web apps. So the FreeBSD handbook has got a lot of information which is very valuable, and even my videos can be valuable. I'm not blowing my own whistle, but there you go. And a whole bunch of other YouTube videos can guide you into what FreeBSD can do and how to do things. It's not perfect, I know, and it hasn't got the same range as Linux, but it's the best we've got at the moment. And as more people come into FreeBSD, the more way they can contribute and write up guides like Vermaiden does, which is an excellent source, by the way, because I really do think that's all you need, and videos. So yeah, we're getting there, but it's, it's like chicken and the egg situation. And support. Well, there are some paid support. You can go to Clara Inc. They offer paid support, I think. They certainly know the business. One of the founders of Clara Inc. Is also a very prominent ZFS aficionado and developer, etc. So that might be worth checking out. And support, really, a lot of it comes from the community, which, although, if you're a business, you want paid support, it is there. You just have to perhaps wade through some of the stuff to get what you really want. But, paid support is expensive, and that's the one how Red Hat made its money over the years. Dylan, the popular chat meeting apps like Zoom, Teams, Vibes, Signal, and DRM-enabled browsers. Zoom, Teams, Vibes, and Signal, yes, well, you could do. I think a lot of these probably are available, if you can, through the browser. DRM-enabled browsers, well, you can do that in FreeBSD. You can have Chrome installed that will work perfectly, and it's I did a video on that. It just shows you a 2-command install. There's no hackery involved, and it works perfectly. So maybe you could use that to get into Zoom, Teams, Vibes, etc. And it's a great thing, because it once was a time when DRM-enabled browsers was almost impossible, and then people started working on it. And you could enable it via kind of like using the Linuxulator in FreeBSD, using the Linux APIs, and now you can do it more or less officially via the package. It's good. Eberhard, friendly install and use. I don't know what S2BSD is as well, but friendly install and use. Yes. A friendly installer, a new installer maybe, where perhaps it gives you choice whether or not you want it to be a server or a desktop. That might be a good idea. Perhaps something for the future. Manuel says there's one point that's not FreeBSD fault, but has brought many headaches, and that's LinuxCentrism. Well, unfortunately, I think that's one of the prices we have to pay. A lot of window managers, applications, stuff like that, it's very much developed for Linux. They expect a lot of Linux things to be there or work in a certain way that Linux works. You name it, it's there. One of them, off the top of my head, would be GNOME, or GNOME, where it expects systemd to be there, and of course systemd is not on FreeBSD. FreeBSD can use a shim, which is like a pretend systemd thing, just in case it asks for it, but that's not perfect. And so really, GNOME or GNOME for FreeBSD is always going to be one or two versions behind Linux. And that particular desktop environment isn't perhaps what it used to be, not since the GNOME 2 days, and that's where Mate comes in. And yeah, I think I understand what you mean. The reliance on Linux and for drivers and the way it's got its hooks into some software. But there are things like KDE, which is developed very nicely on FreeBSD as well. And there's no LinuxCentrisms there. I mean, come the day that we change the naming conventions to Linux stuff, then yes, we'll go mad. But it's not too bad, and it's a small price we have to pay, I think, for to get things working. Curious Pilot is MPLS kernel support, better Wi-Fi driver compatibility, and the more important is an aggressive marketing campaign. I don't know what MPLS kernel support is, but yeah, well, maybe. But Wi-Fi we've covered. And the more important is an aggressive marketing campaign, which is yes. I think an aggressive marketing campaign is something needed, I think. Although that would take funds out of the big pot of money. Well, it's not a big pot of money, but it's a limited pot of money that FreeBSD has. But still, it's how you win hearts and minds over is a slow process, and perhaps you could do something organising schools, or follow FreeBSD, or follow Raspberry Pi's lead and do installs and just get in there and install it. I don't know. Subnet Spider says reliable suspend and resume. I've heard that can be an issue. Lower idle power consumption. Well, there are some tweaks you can do. There's a few guides on the internet for FreeBSD. I think again Vermeer and he's covered this. And native support for the latest Wi-Fi standards. We've covered that, which is very much an issue. An official jail manager would also be nice, as most seem to die after a few years because they're mostly developed and maintained by one person. I don't know about that, if that's an issue. Possibly is. I don't really use jails. I should use jails, shouldn't I? I should get into that more. But yeah, I don't know, is that a thing? If it is, I don't know. But yeah, that sounds fair. But then again, you see, if only by one person, like we could do with more users, conversely, we could do with more developers. And it seems to be a dwindling thing on both sides, I think. From what I've heard, the number of developers is falling slightly as matched by users. Although users are growing a little bit. So it's the difficult one. As you get more users, you're going to need more developers. And the good thing would be to try and get some of them users and turn them into developers. That would be a trick. But it has to be an organic process, I think. Salim says, FreeBSD is best used for servers. You sure can use it as a desktop, but its strength is a server OS. I can see this to me. I heard this. And there is an element of truth. But it's perhaps best used as a server because that doesn't rely on the fact that you need NVIDIA drivers and Wi-Fi and everything else like that, which FreeBSD lacks. It lacks them not because it's a better server. It lacks them because people think you need to use it as a server and not as a desktop. And if they use it as a desktop, more and more people will demand better drivers. So yes, you can use it as a server, but you've got to now think out of the box. You've got to think about it being a desktop OS. Because, Linux is usable, very much usable as a laptop OS. It's very much usable as a desktop OS and as a server now. In fact, it's an uncomfortable truth, I'm afraid, that the vast majority, if not all of the main supercomputers in the world run Linux. They don't run FreeBSD. And I don't know the current status of the Netcraft survey, but like the most reliable sites, the top 10s, it used to be, you'd say like 20 years ago, something like that. Half to 3/4 of them would run FreeBSD. And a few would run other operating systems, and a few will then run Linux. If you looked at the latest survey now, New York Internet is probably the only one that still runs FreeBSD. The rest run Linux. And whereas FreeBSD it does make a fantastic server OS, if you don't branch out and diversify, look at other markets, look at other things, and you will only rely, all your eggs in one basket. Yeah, it's a great server OS, and that particular niche fails and dies, it will take you all with it. then it doesn't matter how great your OS is. If no one's using it, who cares? Linux has managed to take over the supercomputer realm. It's taken over the server realm. And it has. And to an extent, it's growing, very much growing as a desktop. You know, what's left for FreeBSD? Because Linux was, has, and will become synonymous with Unix. I know it's not Unix. FreeBSD is closer to Unix than Linux. But Linux is good enough. It's wide-ranging enough, more compatible. It's compatible enough. It will become Unix. It will become the operating system for nerds and hackers and everyone else. Hackers in the traditional sense, not, no, these nefarious ones. To use. They'll be the one to use. They won't think about using FreeBSD, and therefore we'll lose users and we'll lose developers. I think it's a really difficult one. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive to one or the other. It can be used on both, like Linux is. Linux can be used on servers and desktop. FreeBSD can be used on servers and desktop, and it must, if it wants to. I want this operating system to do well. It's something which I love to use. I'm not the most technical savvy person, but I have a passion for it. And I'm keen to learn. But I don't want it. I've seen, I'm not exactly a spring chicken. I've seen operating systems come and go throughout the years. I've seen Amigas, Atari, 8-bit systems. I've seen them all come and go. And each one is technically brilliant. But for whatever reason, they either fail to capitalize, fail to, evolve or change with the times, and they're faded. Now, I don't want that to happen with FreeBSD. I'm not suggesting it's going to do, but if it doesn't get its fingers out and address the situation that the server rooms are getting used by Linux, the desktops are going to get used by Linux, gaming is now used by Linux, and where does that leave you? So, yeah. It can be used for servers, but it also can be used for desktops. It's something I really strongly feel about. I mean, again, I'm not in no position of power to do anything. I can only, as a user who looks in from the outside, I can suggest. I don't know. We need to do something, otherwise it's just going to fit. I mean, I'm not finished yet. He's running on. I'm on a little rant. Some of the strengths of FreeBSD, like ZFS and all them kind of things, like Beehive and Jails, they're ace. But Linux is stealing your thunder. Linux is getting ZFS, although it's not as tightly integrated and it's not as well done. Licensing issues, but it's there. They can use it. And Jails and Beehive, fantastic. But Linux has got Docker and a whole host of other stuff. And I'm afraid that's industry standard now, so who's going to be using them? I'm not dissing on FreeBSD, but my goodness me, there is a case where you can rest on your laurels, and then the world, you think, oh, look how good we are, we're so great, and you are. But while you're doing that, it's like the highway, the freeway, the motorway, cars are just rushing past, and you're never going to catch them. Anyway, there you go. I'll have to stop now before I spend another half hour talking about it. And Gary, would be nice to be able to use Adobe Premiere Pro, but that's not FreeBSD's fault. Failing that, DaVinci Resolve. I've already mentioned that, Gary. You read my mind. I completely agree. But then again, they don't support. Well, DaVinci Resolve does support Linux, but Adobe don't support Linux. I think it's purely just financial for their aspect. I mean, if they think there's going to be enough users, they'll support it. If they don't think, they won't. You can bring out. It is a chicken and the egg. The more users demand stuff like this, the more stuff like this will support the users. But there has to be demand. And I think that's what FreeBSD needs to crack first. It needs to get more people in. More people will be users. More people will be developers. More people will be creators. Adobe and DaVinci Resolve will look at that and think, okay, well, maybe we should bring one out. It's, yeah, but we have a lot of free alternatives. Kden Live, etc. It's not perfect for everyone, but it's pretty good. And it's free and it works. It's probably the one that you use, Gary. It may seem a little out of this world, almost as if I've lost my marbles, but in the world we live in, if you have a product or a service to sell, then the best thing that you can do is to get a celebrity endorsement. The moment a famous face or name holds up your product, the moment its value reaches for the stars, pun intended. This is what FreeBSD needs. It needs to get its brand known to a wider audience, both to those in the IT tech industry and to the wider world. It could be a famous name in the world of IT, it's unlikely but it could happen, such as Linus Torvalds, Bill Gates, Larry Ellison, or IBM's Arvind Krishna. If any of them suddenly picked up FreeBSD and extolled its virtues, then others in charge of IT departments, projects and business leaders would take note. After all, if it's good enough for the boss of Oracle and IBM, then it's going to be good enough for Joe Blogg's IT services. More preferably, it would be a celebrity in the public sphere, such as Tom Hanks, Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, Dwayne Johnson or Beyoncé, giving a smile whilst greeting the FreeBSD Foundation or the FreeBSD project leaders. A picture of one of them set at a computer with a FreeBSD desktop and logo in the background, like we used to get in the computer magazines of yesteryear with the then current media celebrities. Such endorsements really work. So why do you think manufacturers spend so much on snaring either an established star or an up-and-coming name to sell their product? The cost would depend on the person chosen, of course, but it would need to be someone well-known. The FreeBSD Foundation has the pulling power, the resources, and the experience in helping getting FreeBSD to where it is today in technical terms, by sponsoring various high-level projects for the FreeBSD project team, and I think it can help in the marketing strategy too. GhostBSD and NomadBSD are two mature, desktop-orientated derivatives of FreeBSD. They are smaller than FreeBSD in terms of sponsorship and developer numbers, but they have carved their names in the minds of people who want a desktop FreeBSD with less resources. How have they done this? Well, they have a ready-to-go out-of-the-box desktop OS there, something I think FreeBSD needs. It could be an official release, akin to GhostBSD, say FreeBSD Workstation Edition, or something via the installer that lets you choose, either a server install or a desktop, but which, either way, the old way of leaving it to the user to install a desktop and just pretending things will be okay has to change. Maybe a dedicated division within the FreeBSD project or the FreeBSD Foundation, tasked with a public-facing desktop user, could be a thing. The tools are already there. There's a desktop installer script in the ports package tree. Maybe fork it, brand it, and link it as part of the installer. Having this ability will be a huge lift and a huge shift for FreeBSD, and a move that would say that they are still a server-facing OS, but there are also a desktop workstation one too. If you think this is pure fiction, you have to remember that the now defunct TrueOS had this option, and it worked very well indeed. FreeBSD needs to strike a deal with the big box stores to get products on shelves, or even better, a company like System76 to start selling one or two products on Amazon.com with FreeBSD already installed, with a desktop ready to go. That might sound like pie in the sky, but given how many people look at Amazon as their go-to means of shopping, it certainly wouldn't hurt if FreeBSD had a presence there. And if they started searching for hardware and FreeBSD popped up, that'd be even better. The FreeBSD Foundation and the FreeBSD project need to try avenues that might never have been open or considered before, namely approaching collaboration with either hardware manufacturers or other operating system creators. These type of deals could make a big difference in spreading the word to the wider world. Just recently, I noticed in the news it was about Ubuntu's partner program, and now they've teamed up with Qualcomm. And they've got a few other big names in their partner program as well. They've got Nvidia, AMD, ARM, and a few others. And I was thinking, FreeBSD Foundation also has a partner program, but it's not quite the same. They don't have the big name manufacturers there, or the hardware manufacturers. And I was thinking, It would alleviate a lot of the problems we have with drivers in FreeBSD if they were perhaps included in the partner program. Now, I don't understand how the partner program works. I'm not in the know. I don't know how much it costs. I don't know any of the steps involved. I just speak really from a layman's perspective, in the sense that I know that if you partner up with these hardware manufacturers, you would get close cooperation with your OS for the drivers to be there, rather than the situation we have now where you have to perhaps reverse engineer them or adapt them from Linux. But it's something to consider, and I'm looking closely at the partner program. I'm going to have a look at the Canonical site now, and they have Canonical partner programs. Provide services to our partners need to ensure the hardware and software works optimally with the Ubuntu platform. Now, this is something that maybe FreeBSD really could benefit from if they copied a similar way. I know Canonical is backed by a very rich person, and it's a business, so really you can't compare apples with oranges in this situation. Where, the FreeBSD Foundation is I think it's a 501c in America. It's a non-profit. Well, that's fine. But the impetus is there to perhaps try and, not emulate, but do something similar. Again, I don't know the ins and outs of it. Maybe you can't with a non-profit. I don't know. But I'm just looking at the partner program, and they have programs for public cloud, IHV OEMs, Silicon, that's for CPUs and chipsets, etc. Channels and resellers, IoT devices, ISVs, global system integrators, and desktop. Now, the desktop one at the bottom, if I click on that, they work specifically with Dell, HP, and Lenovo. Now, just having them with FreeBSD would perhaps enable, I don't know, maybe one or two models to come preloaded with FreeBSD. And that might be an idea. So, and then having a look at, say, public cloud. You've got Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, IBM, Oracle, and Amazon. And Silicon, for the chipset, etc. They've got Intel, Ampere, ARM, S5, the SBC maker. NVIDIA, AMD, and more recently Qualcomm. I don't know, and even Allwinner. So, because it's getting its act together and getting in with the people who originate the hardware, you can have tight integration with your OS, something which FreeBSD perhaps doesn't have. Now, again, I'm just ranting here. I'm just spitballing ideas, but maybe we could follow something like that. Maybe not. Maybe it can't happen. But if it did, you imagine the benefits. You don't only have, drivers developed in collaboration with the hardware manufacturers, but also the distributors, and people could buy a machine with everything set up with FreeBSD on. Either set up as a desktop or set up as a server. Excellent. But, we can dream. If you found this video useful, then please consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you found more than one video useful, then please consider subscribing. And if you do subscribe, then hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. I do all the videos myself on this channel. I use FreeBSD and the tools associated to do it. I don't use AI. It's all me, with me, just my passion and my interest in FreeBSD. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. If more people had heard of it, the more people would use it. I think it needs a publicization. If more people had heard of it, more people would use it. I think it needs a publicization.